September of 34, I was standing on the courthouse steps in Garrett, Texas. Dust so thick you could taste the grit between your teeth, watching Sheriff Landry sell off a dead preacher's belongings like yard sale junk. Then he called out the last item. One female, age 16, deaf and dumb, no kin to claim her. The girl stood there in a flour sack dress, head down, while grown men bid on her like she was livestock. Vernon Cade, richest son of a gun in 3 counties, was grinning like a cat with a cornered mouse, ready to add her to his cotton gin crew. Something in my gut twisted hard, same way it did the day I buried my own daughter. I opened my fool mouth and bid $30, every cent I had left in this world. By dawn Thursday, either that girl would taste freedom or they'd be digging 2 graves instead of 1. The courthouse steps smelled like sweat and desperation that morning. Must have been 100 folks gathered, farmers who couldn't pay their taxes, widows losing their homes, men in patched overalls clutching their last few coins. Sheriff Landry stood up there with his gavel and his ledger, calling out lots like he was selling cattle at the stockyard. I hadn't planned on being there. Hell, I'd been fixing fence posts out at the old Mackenzie place, trying to earn 2 bits for the day. But something pulled me into town. Call it the Lord's whisper or just plain stubbornness. Either way, I ended up in that crowd, my hat pulled low, watching folks lose everything they'd worked their whole lives for. Landry's voice cut through the murmur. Next item. Estate of Reverend Isaiah Hollis, deceased August 20th. We got household goods, some books, a pocket watch. He paused, shuffled his papers. And one dependent female, age 16, deaf and unable to speak. No living relatives to claim guardianship. The crowd went quiet. You could hear the wind rattling the tin roof on Gunderson's feed store. Then they brought her out. She couldn't have weighed more than 100 pounds soaking wet. Dark hair tangled around her face, arms wrapped tight across her chest like she was holding herself together by sheer will. That flour sack dress hung on her like a scarecrow's coat. But it was her eyes that got me, brown as creek water, staring at nothing, seeing everything. A woman behind me whispered, "Ain't Christian, selling a girl like that." Her husband hushed her quick. "Times are hard, Mabel. Girls gotta eat somehow." Landry banged his gavel. "We'll start the bidding at $5. Someone's gotta take responsibility for feeding her, housing her. Consider it an indenture arrangement. She works, you provide for her needs. All legal and proper." Legal and proper. I'd heard those words before. Heard 'em when they foreclosed on the Jenkins farm. Heard 'em when they ran the Mexican families out of the labor camps. Fancy words that dressed up cruelty in Sunday clothes. $5, called out Tobias Ward, who ran the laundry. His wife elbowed him hard, and he shut his mouth. $10. That was Vernon Cade, standing in the front like he owned the whole damn town, which, near enough, he did. Man owned the cotton gin, half the farmland, and most of the mortgages. He wore a white suit despite the dust, a gold watch chain stretched across his belly. $10 for the girl. Nobody else spoke. Who dare bid against Cade? I knew what happened to folks who worked Cade's gin. Seen a boy from Chihuahua come out after 6 months, hands ruined, eyes hollow. Seen a woman collapse from heat stroke in his fields while Cade's foreman stood there timing how long before she got back up. Landry raised his gavel. $10 going once. My daughter Emma would have been 18 this year if the fever hadn't taken her. She used to sing while she churned butter, voice like a meadowlark. This girl would never sing, but that didn't mean she deserved to be worked to death in Cade's gin, breathing cotton dust till her lungs gave out. $20. My voice sounded like gravel scraping iron. Every head turned. The crowd parted slightly, and there I was, Elwood Pruitt, 52 years old, no wife, no kids, barely scraping by on odd jobs since the railroad laid me off in 31. I hadn't shaved in 3 days. My boots had holes in the soles. Cade's eyes narrowed. He looked me up and down like I was dog mess on his shoe. 25. My hands were shaking. $20 was every cent I had saved in the coffee tin under my bed. But my mouth kept moving. 30! Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cade's face went red as a rooster's comb. 40, he said, biting off each word. I did the math in my head. Could sell my pocket watch, my daddy's watch. Could sign a note against my house, the last thing I owned free and clear. Could borrow from who? Nobody had nothing to lend. The girl's eyes found mine for just a second. She didn't beg, didn't plead, just looked at me like she was memorizing my face, in case it was the last kind thing she ever saw. $50, I said, and I'll sign a note for it. Landry's gavel cracked like a gunshot. Sold to Elwood Pruitt. As I walked up those steps to sign the papers, Vernon Cade leaned in close enough I could smell his cologne and cigar smoke. His voice was soft as silk, cold as December. You just made the worst mistake of your miserable life, railroad man. The walk from the courthouse to my place was only half a mile, but it felt like crossing the entire state of Texas. The girl, Mercy, I'd learned from the papers, walked 3 steps behind me the whole way, eyes fixed on the dirt road. Folks stared from their porches, whispering behind their hands. Mrs. Kowalski, who ran the general store, actually turned her back when we passed. That stung more than I'd like to admit. Her late husband and I used to play checkers every Saturday. My house sat at the edge of town where the road petered out into scrubland. Wasn't much. 2 rooms, a saggy porch, and a roof that leaked when the rain came hard. But it was paid for, or had been until I'd signed that fool note with Landry. I held the door open. Mercy stood on the porch, hesitating like a stray dog that's been kicked too many times. "It ain't the Ritz Hotel," I said. Then remembered she couldn't hear a blessed word. I gestured inside, tried to make my face look friendly instead of just old and tired. She stepped in, moving along the wall like she wanted to keep the exit in sight. The front room held a wood stove, a table with 2 chairs, and a moth-eaten sofa I'd hauled from the dump 3 years back. Through the doorway, you could see my bed and not much else. I pointed to the sofa, then to her. She shook her head, sank down on the floor in the corner instead, knees pulled up to her chest. Lord, give me strength, I thought. I don't know the first thing about helping this child. I heated up some beans on the stove, last of the tin I'd bought on credit at Kowalski's, and dumped them in a chipped bowl. Set it on the floor near her with a spoon. She stared at it like it might bite her. I ate my portion at the table, making sure she could see me, trying to show it was safe. After about 10 minutes, she picked up the spoon. Her hands trembled so bad the first bite barely made it to her mouth. But she ate, didn't look up once. When she finished, she set the bowl down careful-like and pulled something from her dress pocket, a photograph creased and worn at the edges. She held it out to me. I took it gentle. The picture showed a man in a preacher's collar. Must have been her daddy, Reverend Hollis. He had kind eyes and a tired smile. Next to him stood a younger version of Mercy, maybe 12 years old, grinning wide. On the back, written in shaky handwriting, "To whoever shows mercy to my girl, God sees your kindness. Isaiah Hollis." My throat went tight. I handed it back and our fingers touched for just a second. She pulled away quick, but not before I saw something shift in her expression. Not trust exactly, but maybe the tiniest crack in the wall she'd built around herself. I found a pencil stub and the back of an old feed bill. Wrote in big letters, "You sleep on sofa. I sleep in back room. Door stays open. You are safe here." She read it slow, lips moving slightly. Then she looked up at me, searching my face for the lie. I just nodded. She finally climbed onto the sofa, still fully dressed, shoes on. Didn't even take off her coat, though it was warm enough to make you sweat. She lay there, stiff as a board, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. I left the lamp burning low and went to my room. Didn't close the door, like I'd promised. Lay there in my clothes too, listening to the night sounds. Crickets, distant coyotes, the wind rattling the loose board on the porch. Around midnight, I heard her crying. Not loud, couldn't be, seeing as she was mute, but the kind of crying that shakes your whole body, the kind that comes from places too deep for sound. I wanted to go out there, tell her it'd be all right. But I figured she'd had enough of men making promises for one day. Instead, I prayed. Asked God to send her some peace. Asked him what in the Sam Hill I thought I was doing. I must have dozed off sometime after 2. The pounding on the door jolted me awake near dawn. Heavy fists, footsteps on the porch. Then voices. Men's voices, rough and liquored up. "Pruitt, we know you got her in there. Send the girl out, old man, before this gets ugly." Through the doorway, I could see Mercy sit bolt upright on the sofa, eyes wide with terror. Then I smelled it, kerosene, and saw the flicker of torchlight through the window cracks. I grabbed my shotgun from beside the bed and stepped into the front room. Mercy was pressed against the wall, shaken like a leaf in a thunderstorm. I pointed to the back room. She shook her head fierce, wasn't leaving my side, apparently. The pounding came again, harder. "Last chance, Pruitt!" I cracked the door open, shotgun pointed at the porch boards. 6 men stood there in the pre-dawn gray, torches guttering in the wind. Bull McCarthy, Cade's foreman, stood front and center, big as a barn door, mean as a snake. Behind him were the Archer brothers, both dumb as posts, but useful when Cade needed muscle. The others I recognized from town: Pete Garza, who worked the livery, Dutch Kensington from the mill, and Charlie Voss, who I'd once considered a friend. "Fellas," I said, keeping my voice steady, "it's awful early for a social call." Bull spat tobacco juice onto my porch. "Don't play cute, old man. Mr. Cade paid fair and square at that auction. That girl's his property by rights. You stole her with your fancy biddin', knowing damn well you can't pay that note. I signed legal papers with Sheriff Landry. Girl's in my custody now." "Your custody?" Bull laughed, and the others joined in like a pack of coyotes. "You ain't got 2 nickels to rub together. Can't even keep yourself fed proper, let alone a growin' girl. You did this to embarrass Mr. Cade, and he don't take kindly to embarrassment." One of the Archer brothers, the one with the lazy eye, waved his torch. "We could just take her. 6 of us, one of you." I raised the shotgun an inch. "That'd be a mistake." "You gonna shoot all of us?" Bull grinned, showing brown teeth. "That scattergun's only got 2 shells. Even if you got us, you'd hang for murder. Then the girl goes to Cade anyway." He had me, and he knew it. My hands tightened on the barrel. "What's Mr. Cade want?" I asked. "Simple. Sign a release, let him take over the custody agreement. He'll even forgive the note. You keep your little shack here. Everybody goes home happy." "Except the girl," Bull shrugged. "She's deaf and dumb, Pruitt. Ain't like she's gonna make something of herself. At least at the gin she'll have work, 3 meals a day, a place to sleep. That's more than most folks got right now." 3 meals and a early grave, I thought. But I didn't say it. Behind me I felt movement. Mercy had come to stand in the doorway, half hidden behind my shoulder. She was staring at Bull with those creek water eyes, and I could see her chest risin' and fallin' fast. Terrified, but not runnin'. Standin' her ground. "Mr. Cade's waiting on an answer," Bull said. Before I could speak, a voice cut through the darkness. "That's far enough, Bull McCarthy." Everyone turned. Opal Hutchins stood in the road, still wearing her nightgown with a coat thrown over it, hair in curlers. She was holding a Winchester rifle, the one her late husband had carried in the Great War. "Ms. Hutchins," Bull said, "this ain't your concern." "The hell it ain't. I seen what you boys done to the Mendoza family last spring when they couldn't pay their rent. Burned their crops, broke Miguel's arm, ran 'em clear to the county line. Ain't happening again. Not in my town." "Your town?" Bull's face reddened. "Last I checked, Vernon Cade owns most of this town, including the mortgage on your precious boarding house." "Then I guess I got nothing to lose, do I?" Movement to my left. Silas Reed, the blacksmith, stepped out from the shadows between our houses. He wasn't carrying a weapon, but Silas didn't need one. Man was built like an oak tree, hands like anvils. He'd fought bare knuckle in his younger days, won more fights than he lost. "Evening, Elwood," Silas said, calm as Sunday morning. "Thought you might could use some company." Bull's confidence flickered. You could see him doing the math. 6 men, but now 3 against them, one with a rifle. And if shooting started, neighbors would come running. This had turned into a real mess, and Cade wouldn't like that. Bad for business. "This ain't over," Bull finally said. "Mr. Cade's got the law on his side. Sheriff Landry, Judge Fenton, they'll straighten this out legal-like." He jerked his head, and the men backed away, taking their torches with them. But before he left, Bull pointed at me. "You got till Thursday, Pruitt. That's when your note comes due. You don't have $50 by then, the bank forecloses, and that girl becomes a ward of the county again. Guess who the county's gonna give her to?" They disappeared into the gray dawn, leaving the smell of kerosene and threat hanging in the air. I turned to Opal and Silas. "You folks didn't have to do that." Opal lowered her rifle. "Maybe not, but sitting by while wrong happens, that makes you part of it." Silas just nodded. "You need anything, Elwood, you holler." As they walked away, I felt Mercy's hand touch my arm, just barely, light as a bird. When I looked down, she was staring up at me with something new in her eyes. Not trust yet, but maybe the beginnings of it. Then I heard hoofbeats. A single rider, coming fast. Marshal Landry reined up in front of my house, dismounted slow. He looked tired, older than his 40-some years. "Elwood," he said, pulling a folded paper from his coat. "I got a warrant here. Judge Fenton signed it 20 minutes ago. Says you're to be held on charges of fraud and coercion regarding yesterday's auction." My stomach dropped. "Vernon Cade filed a formal complaint, claims you threatened his foreman, created a public disturbance, and obtained custody under false pretenses." Landry wouldn't meet my eyes. "I got no choice, Elwood. You're coming with me." Landry let me walk Mercy over to Opal's boarding house before he took me in. The sun was just cracking the horizon, painting the sky the color of a bad bruise. Mercy's hand gripped mine so tight I could feel her pulse hammering against my palm. Opal met us at her door, still in that nightgown and coat. "She can stay as long as needed, Elwood. Don't you worry about that." I knelt down so I was eye level with Mercy, pulled out that pencil stub, and found another scrap of paper. "I will come back. Ms. Opal will keep you safe. Trust me." She read it, then looked at Landry standing behind me with his hand resting on his pistol grip. Her eyes went wide, started filling with tears. She shook her head hard. "No, no, no." I touched her cheek gentle, like I used to do with Emma when she had nightmares. Mercy flinched at first, then leaned into it just slightly. I could feel her trembling. "It'll be all right," I said, knowing she couldn't hear but hoping somehow she'd understand. Then I stood and followed Landry to his horse. The marshal's office sat behind the courthouse, a squat brick building that smelled like old coffee and sweat. Landry locked me in the only cell, iron bars that had seen better days, a cot with a thin mattress, and a bucket in the corner. "I'm sorry about this, Elwood," Landry said, hanging the keys on a nail by his desk. "Truly I am." "You sorry enough to let me go?" He sighed, sat down heavy in his chair. "You know I can't do that. Judge Fenton's orders." "Fenton's in Cade's pocket and everybody knows it. Knowing it and proving it are two different things." Landry poured himself coffee from a pot that looked like it'd been brewing since yesterday. "Look, the hearing's set for Thursday morning. You got a day and a half. If you can somehow come up with that $50 and show the judge you can provide for the girl proper like, maybe this all goes away." "And if I can't?" Landry stared into his coffee cup. "Then you lose your house, the girl goes back to county custody, and Cade gets what he wanted from the start." I sat on that sorry excuse for a cot and put my head in my hands. $50 might as well have been 50,000. Even if I sold everything I owned, my daddy's pocket watch, the shotgun, the furniture, I'd be lucky to scrape together 15. The morning dragged by, slow as molasses. Through the small barred window, I could see folks going about their business on Main Street. Mrs. Chen hanging laundry. The Hoffman boys chasing a dog. Life just rolling along while mine came apart at the seams. Around noon, Silas Reed showed up carrying a dinner pail. "Opal sent this," he said, handing it through the bars. Beans and cornbread, still warm. "Girl's doing all right. Scared, but all right. Silas, I need to ask you something." I kept my voice low so Landry wouldn't hear from his desk in the front room. "You got any money put aside? Anything you could loan me?" His face fell. "Elwood, I would if I could, but I had to pay Doc Morrison for setting my boy's broken arm last month. I'm tapped clean till harvest, and that's assuming the crops don't fail again." I nodded, figured as much, but had to ask. "But I've been thinking," Silas continued, "there might be another way." Before he could explain, the door banged open. Luther Gibbs, the town clerk, stumbled in looking like he'd seen a ghost. He was a small man, mild-mannered, the kind who crossed the street to avoid confrontation. Now his hands were shaken, and sweat beaded on his forehead despite the autumn chill. "Marshall," Luther stammered. "I need to. I got something important." Landry looked up from his paperwork. "Luther, you feeling all right? You look peaked." Luther glanced at me in the cell, then at Silas. He pulled a dusty leather folder from under his coat, the kind the county used for official documents. "I found something. In the archives." "On from 6 months ago." His voice cracked. "Reverend Hollis's last will and testament, filed legal and proper." Landry stood up. "Luther, if this is some kind of joke—" "No joke, Marshall. It's right here." Luther opened the folder with trembling fingers. "Says clear as day, in the event of my death, guardianship of my daughter Mercy shall pass to any God-fearing man willing to show her Christian charity and protection. No auction or public sale shall determine her fate." The office went dead quiet. You could hear a clock ticking on the wall, counting down the seconds. Landry took the folder, read it careful. His jaw tightened. "Why didn't this come forward yesterday at the auction?" Luther's eyes dropped to the floor. "Mr. Cade. He told me to lose it. Said if I brought it forward, he'd foreclose on my wife's family farm. We got 3 kids, Marshall. I got 3 kids and nowhere else to go." "So you let a girl get sold like livestock?" "I know." Luther's voice broke. "I know what I done, but I can't sleep, can't eat. My wife keeps asking what's wrong, and I can't even look her in the eye." He looked up at Landry, tears streaming down his face. "I'm turning myself in for obstruction of justice or whatever you want to call it. But that document's real, and it makes yesterday's auction illegal." Landry stood there holding that folder like it might explode. Finally, he walked over to the cell and unlocked the door. "Get out, Elwood." I didn't move. "Just like that?" "This will supersedes any auction. You took custody of that girl exactly the way her father intended, out of Christian mercy. Ain't no judge can argue with a man's last wishes, not even Fenton." I stepped out of that cell, legs wobbly. Silas clapped me on the shoulder, grinning wide, but Luther grabbed my arm. "Mr. Pruitt, you gotta understand, Cade's gonna come after me now, and when he does, he won't stop there. He'll come after you twice as hard. This ain't over. It's just getting started." As if to punctuate his words, we heard it. A commotion outside, shouting, horse hooves on cobblestone. Landry went to the window and cursed under his breath. "What is it?" I asked. "Vernon Cade, and he brought Judge Fenton with him." Vernon Cade came through that door like he owned the place, which, considering he held the mortgage on half the buildings in town, wasn't far from the truth. Judge Fenton followed behind, a wizened old vulture in a black suit, carrying his leather case full of legal papers. Cade's eyes landed on me, then on Luther holding that will. His face went hard as granite. "Marshall Landry," Cade said, voice smooth as honey over gravel. "I understand there's been some confusion regarding yesterday's proceedings." "No confusion, Mr. Cade." Landry held up the document. "Reverend Hollis's will clearly states—" "That will was sealed for a reason," Fenton interrupted, his voice thin and reedy. "It requires probate before it can be enacted. Until such time, the auction stands as legal." "That's horse shit, and you know it," I said. Fenton's eyes narrowed. "Watch your tongue, Mr. Pruitt, or I'll hold you in contempt." "Of what? We ain't in a courtroom." Cade stepped between us, hands raised like a peacemaker. "Gentlemen, let's not lose our heads. Judge Fenton is correct. The will needs proper review. However, I'm a reasonable man." He turned to me. "Mr. Pruitt, I'll make you a fair offer. Sign over custody to me. I'll forgive your $50 note, and I'll even pay you $10 for your trouble. The girl will be well cared for." "Like you cared for that Chihuahua boy? The one who left your gin with ruined hands?" Cade's mask slipped for just a second. "That boy was clumsy. Not my concern." "I ain't signing nothing." Cade's smile vanished. "Then you'll be in court Thursday morning. And when you lose, and you will lose, I'll make sure you never work in this county again." He turned on his heel and left, Fenton scurrying behind him like a trained dog. Landry exhaled slow. "Elwood, you just painted a target on your back bigger than Texas." "Reckon I did." I walked back to Opal's boarding house through the afternoon heat, dust devils spinning in the street. My mind was churning. 2 days till the hearing, no money, and the most powerful man in the county gunning for me. Opal met me at the door. "She's upstairs. Second room on the right. Been sitting by the window all morning watching for you." I climbed those stairs slow, each step creaking under my weight. Found Mercy exactly where Opal said, curled up in a chair by the window, staring out at the street. When she heard the floorboards, she turned, and her whole face lit up like sunrise. She was off that chair and across the room before I could blink, arms wrapped around my waist, face pressed against my chest. And I stood there frozen for a moment, hadn't been hugged by another human being since Emma died. Then my arms came up gentle, holding her while she shook with silent sobs. "It's all right," I murmured into her hair. "You're safe. I promised, didn't I?" After a spell, she pulled back, wiping her eyes. Opal had given her a proper dress. Nothing fancy, but clean and fitted. Her hair was brushed, tied back with a ribbon. She looked like a regular girl instead of a scared animal. I sat down on the bed and she sat beside me. I pulled out my pencil and paper, wrote, "I have to go to court Thursday. Judge will decide where you stay." She read it, then took the pencil from my hand. Her letters were shaky but clear. "Will you keep me?" My throat went tight. "If the judge lets me, I promise I will try." She wrote again, "Why do you care about me? Nobody else does." I stared at those words for a long minute. How do you explain to a 16-year-old girl that the world's not as cruel as it's been to her? That some folks still believe in doing right even when it costs? "Because you deserve someone who cares," I wrote. "And because my daughter would want me to." She read it, then looked up at me with those creekwater eyes brimming with tears. She reached out and took my hand, just held it between both of hers, like she was memorizing the feel of it. We sat like that for a while, not moving, not needing to. A knock at the door broke the moment. Opal poked her head in. "Elwood, there's someone here to see you. Says it's important." I followed her downstairs. Standing in the parlor was a man I'd never seen before, dark-skinned, maybe 40 years old, wearing denims and a silver-banded hat. His eyes were sharp, intelligent. "Mr. Pruitt, my name is Sam Begay. I trade goods between here and the reservation twice a month." He extended his hand, and I shook it. "I heard about what you did at the auction. Among my people, the Diné, we have a tradition called K. It means kinship through action, not just blood. You performed a kinship rescue." "I just did what felt right." "That's what K is." Sam pulled a folded paper from his vest. "Our tribal council meets tomorrow at dawn. If you're willing, we can formally adopt the girl into our nation. That puts her under federal Indian law, which supersedes county jurisdiction. Mr. Cade would have to go through the Bureau of Indian Affairs to touch her, and that's a legal fight even he can't win." Hope flared in my chest. "You'd do that?" "Already spoke to the elders. They agreed. What you did honors the old ways. We take care of our own, and now she's one of ours." He paused. "But you should know, Cade won't take this lying down. He'll see it as Indians meddling in white man's business. Could get ugly." "It's already ugly." Sam nodded. "Council meets at sunrise, 20 miles north at Cottonwood Springs. Be there by 6. After he left, I felt the first real glimmer of hope since this whole mess started. Maybe, just maybe, we had a way out. I was headed back upstairs to tell Mercy when Silas came barreling through the door, out of breath. "Elwood, your house. It's on fire." By the time I got there, the whole structure was engulfed. Flames licking the sky, black smoke pouring out. Half the town stood in the street watching it burn. The volunteer fire brigade was spraying water, but it was too late. Nothing left to save. Everything I owned, my daddy's watch, Emma's things, all of it gone. Bull McCarthy stood at the edge of the crowd, not even trying to hide his smirk. Landry pushed through to me. "Fire marshal says it's arson. Found kerosene cans in the back." Nailed to the fence post, fluttering in the hot wind, was a note scrawled in crude letters. "Last warning. Give up the girl or you'll burn too. VC." I stood there watching my life turn to ash and cinder, the heat so fierce I could feel it from 30 feet away. Everything, every memory, every piece of my past, reduced to smoke rising into the Texas sky. Mercy appeared beside me, Opal holding her by the shoulders. When the girl saw the flames, she made a sound. Not quite a cry, more like a wounded animal. She'd lost her daddy, been sold like livestock, and now the one place that had offered her shelter was burning to the ground. I wanted to tell her it'd be all right, but the lie stuck in my throat. Mr. Pruitt? A timid voice behind me. I turned to find Charlie Voss, the one I'd thought was my friend, the one who'd been standing with Bull's mob that morning. He was holding his hat in his hands, wringing it like a dish rag. Could I, could I speak with you private like? Ain't got much to say to you, Charlie. I know, and I don't blame you none. His eyes were red-rimmed, not from the smoke. But please, just give me a minute. Something in his voice made me follow him away from the crowd, down toward the scrub brush where the town ended. Mercy's eyes tracked me the whole way, terrified I was leaving again. Charlie waited till we were out of earshot. I need to tell you something, and I need you to not fly off the handle till I'm done. Get on with it. I was there when they planned it. Tonight, Bull and the Archer boys, they met at Cade's office this afternoon. I was delivering lumber for the new warehouse, and I heard him through the window. He swallowed hard. They didn't just burn your house, Elwood. They're planning to run you clean out of the county. Tomorrow night, they're gonna grab the girl from Opal's place while you're at that Indian council meeting. My hands clenched into fists. Why the hell didn't you warn me sooner? Why were you with Bull's mob this morning? Because I'm a coward, the words exploded out of him. Cade holds the note on my feed store. I got a wife and 2 babies, and he threatened to call it due if I didn't fall in line. I've been doing his dirty work for 6 months now, and I hate myself for it. Tears streamed down his weathered face. But watching your house burn, seeing that girl's face, I can't do it no more. I can't. I studied him hard. Charlie and I went back 20 years. We'd worked the railroad together, shared a tent during the big strike of 19. He'd held Emma when she was born, stood beside me at my wife's funeral. What do you want from me? I asked. Nothing. I don't deserve nothing. I'm telling you their plan so you can protect her, and I'm telling you something else. He glanced back toward town. Luther ain't the only one Cade's got dirt on. There's 8, maybe 10 men in this town who'd stand with you if they weren't scared of losing everything. The Kowalskis, Pete Garza, Dutch Kensington, they all hate what Cade's doing, but they're trapped same as I was. Was? Charlie straightened his shoulders. I'm done. He can have my store. I'll take my family and move to my brother's place in Oklahoma. But before I go, I'm going to tell Landry everything I know about Cade's operation. The bribes, the threats, the arsons, all of it. I looked at this broken man in front of me, and I saw something I hadn't expected. Courage. The kind that comes not from being fearless, but from being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. Charlie, if you testify against Cade, you'll be putting a target on your family. I know, but if I don't, I can't live with myself no more, and I can't teach my boys that it's okay to stand by while evil happens. He met my eyes. I'm sorry, Elwood, for this morning for not standing with you. I'm sorry. I clapped a hand on his shoulder. Then make it right. Tell Landry. And tell him quick, before Cade gets wind you've turned. Charlie nodded and hurried off toward the marshal's office. I walked back to where Mercy stood with Opal. The girl's face was streaked with soot and tears. I knelt down, wrote on a scrap of paper someone handed me. We are going to the Indian Council tomorrow. They will make you part of their family. You will be safe. She read it, then wrote back, What about you? I will be fine. I lied. She didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes. But she nodded anyway. Silas appeared at my elbow. Elwood, you and the girl can stay at my place tonight. I got a spare room and my wife's already making up the bed. Silas, I can't ask you to. You ain't asking. I'm telling. His jaw was set firm. And tomorrow morning, I'm riding with you to that council meeting. You ain't facing this alone. One by one, others came forward. Opal offered food and supplies. Old Mrs. Chen brought a quilt she'd been saving for her daughter's wedding. Pete Garza promised to keep watch on Opal's boarding house through the night. Even in the darkness, with my house still smoldering behind me, I felt something shift. These people, my neighbors, they were finding their spines again. But as the crowd dispersed and twilight settled over the town, I saw a rider on the hill overlooking everything, just sitting there on his horse watching. Bull McCarthy. And I knew, no matter what happened at that tribal council, no matter what Charlie told Landry, Thursday's hearing was going to be a bloodbath. Cade wasn't backing down, he was digging in. We rode out before dawn, me, Mercy, Silas, and Sam Begay. The girl sat behind me on Sam's borrowed horse, her arms wrapped tight around my waist. The desert was cold at that hour, stars still bright overhead, coyotes singing their last songs before sunrise. 20 miles never felt so long. Cottonwood Springs sat in a valley where a creek still ran year-round, defying the drought. The Navajo camp was a collection of hogans and canvas tents, cook fires sending up thin trails of smoke. As we approached, I saw 'em, 7 elders sitting in a circle near the largest hogan, waiting. Sam dismounted and spoke to them in his language, gestures including me and Mercy. An old woman with silver braids down to her waist looked at us with eyes that seemed to see straight through to your soul. "They're ready," Sam said. "But you should know, this ain't like a white man's court. They'll ask questions and you gotta answer truthful. They'll know if you're lying." We approached the circle. The elders sat on blankets and logs, faces weathered by sun and wind and time. The old woman, Sam called her Astsomo Nudai, which meant wise grandmother, gestured for me to sit. I did. Mercy stood behind me, one hand resting on my shoulder. The grandmother spoke in Navajo. Sam translated. She asks why a white man risks everything for a girl who is not his blood. I took a breath. My daughter died 10 years ago. Fever took her quick. 3 days from healthy to gone. I held her while she passed, felt her go cold in my arms. My voice cracked. I couldn't save Emma, but I could save this girl. And when I saw her standing on those courthouse steps, being sold like she was nothing, I couldn't walk away. Emma wouldn't have wanted me to walk away. Sam translated. The elders listened, faces unreadable. Another elder spoke, a man with a scar running across his forehead. Sam translated. He asks if you seek to own the girl, as the white man Cade does. No, sir. I seek to give her a home where she's treated like a human being, where she can grow up safe, where she can choose her own path when she's ready. More Navajo. Then the grandmother. She asks what you will do when the white man's law comes for you, when they take your freedom, your life. Will you still protect her then? I looked back at Mercy. Her eyes were wide, scared but trusting. That trust nearly broke me. Ma'am, I ain't a brave man. I'm scared half to death right now, but I made a promise, to her daddy, to her, to myself. I'll keep that promise till I draw my last breath. The elders conferred among themselves, voices low and serious, minutes stretched like hours. The sun crept over the horizon, painting the valley gold. Finally, the grandmother stood. She approached Mercy, studied her face. Then she did something unexpected. She smiled, spoke directly to the girl in Navajo, even though Mercy couldn't hear. Sam whispered to me, "She's blessing her, saying she sees strength in the girl's spirit." The grandmother pulled a silver bracelet from her own wrist and placed it on Mercy's. Then she turned to the other elders and spoke at length. Sam's face broke into a grin. They're accepting her. She's Dene now, one of the people. Relief flooded through me so strong my knees went weak. But then the scarred elder spoke again, his tone grave. Sam's smile faded. "What?" I asked. "What is it?" He says, "The adoption protects her under federal law, but it don't protect you. You're still subject to the county court. If they convict you, if they take you away, or—" Sam paused. "If you die, she'll still be safe with us, but you won't be there to see her grow up." The weight of it settled on my shoulders. I'd saved Mercy, but I hadn't saved myself. The grandmother spoke once more, her voice firm. Sam translated. She says the Dene do not forget those who show K. You will always have a place here, if you need it. But she warns. Powerful men do not forgive being defied. The white man Cade will come for you with everything he has. I know. Then go with courage. And know that the girl is ours now. No man can touch her without answering to the nation. We rode back toward Garrett in the full light of morning. Mercy wore that silver bracelet, turning it over and over on her wrist, something like wonder on her face. Maybe for the first time in her life, she belonged somewhere. As for me, I felt lighter and heavier all at once. Lighter because I'd done what I set out to do. Heavier because I knew what was coming. We were still 5 miles from town when we saw the dust cloud. Riders, coming fast. Silas pulled his horse up short. That's a posse. Sam shaded his eyes. 8 riders, maybe more. And leading them, on a big black stallion, was Bull McCarthy. They surrounded us in the open desert, nowhere to run. Bull grinned like the devil himself. Well, Elwood Pruitt and his little band of do-gooders. He pulled a paper from his saddlebag. I got a warrant here, signed by Judge Fenton. Says you're wanted for arson, conspiracy, and kidnapping. That Indian meddlin' don't mean nothing in Texas law. That warrant's horseshit, Silas growled. Maybe, but it's legal horseshit. Bull's eyes landed on Mercy. And the girl's coming with us. Fenton ruled the tribal adoption don't count till it's registered with the Bureau. Takes 30 days. Till then, she's still county property. My heart stopped. No. The elders said, I don't give a damn what some Indian said. This here's a legal warrant. Bull urged his horse forward. Now you can come peaceful, or we can make this hard. Your choice. I looked at Mercy. Her face had gone pale, all that hope draining away. Sam spoke up. You touch her, you'll start a war with the Navajo Nation. Bull laughed. By the time your precious elders hear about it, she'll be working Cade's gin and Pruitt'll be swinging from a rope. He reached for Mercy. And that's when Charlie Voss came riding up the road behind the posse, Marshal Landry beside him. Bull McCarthy, Landry's voice cracked like thunder. Step away from that girl, right now. Bull's grin faltered. Marshal, this don't concern you. I got a legal warrant. That warrant's about as legal as a $3 bill. Landry rode forward, Charlie right behind him. I just spent the last 4 hours at Judge Fenton's house, going through his personal files. You know what I found? Ledgers. Payments from Vernon Cade going back 3 years. Every dirty ruling, every foreclosure, every piece of corruption, all documented in Fenton's own hand. The posse shifted uneasily. Even Bull's confidence cracked a little. You're lying, Bull said, but his voice lacked conviction. Charlie spoke up, his voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. I was there when Cade told Fenton to write that warrant. Last night, after the fire, I heard every word through the office window. Cade said, I don't care what it takes. I want Pruitt in chains and that girl in my gin by sundown Thursday. Murmurs rippled through Bull's men. Pete Garza, riding with the posse, cleared his throat. Bull, if the marshal says the warrant's fake, shut your mouth, Pete. No. Pete's jaw set firm. I'm done. I only rode out here 'cause you said it was legal, but if it ain't, I ain't kidnapping no girl for Vernon Cade or nobody else. One by one, the other riders backed their horses away from Bull. Even the Archer brothers looked uncertain. Bull's face went red as a beet. You lily-livered cowards! Mr. Cade pays your wages. And that's all he pays for, Dutch Kensington interrupted. Not our souls, not our honor. Bull found himself suddenly alone, surrounded by men who'd once followed his every order. His hand dropped to his pistol. I wouldn't, Silas said quietly. The big blacksmith hadn't moved, but something in his tone made Bull's hand freeze. Landry dismounted, walked straight up to Bull's horse. Clayton McCarthy, you're under arrest for arson, conspiracy, and attempted kidnapping. Climb down off that horse nice and slow. You can't arrest me. I work for Mr. Cade. That's the problem, Bull. You work for Cade, not the law. Landry's hand rested on his own pistol now. And Cade just made his biggest mistake. He kept records, every bribe, every threat, every illegal act. Fenton documented it all, probably figuring he'd need insurance someday. Well, that insurance just bought him a federal investigation and you a cell. Bull's eyes darted around, looking for an escape. Found none. Finally, he dismounted, hands raised. As Landry cuffed him, Bull spat in the dirt. You think this changes anything? Mr. Cade's got lawyers, connections all the way to Austin. He'll be back on top in a week, and all you folks will pay for this betrayal. Maybe, I said, standing up from where I'd been sitting my horse. But here's what I learned this week, Bull. You can't buy dignity. You can't threaten it away. You can't burn it down. These people. I gestured to the men who'd been riding with him. They just remembered that. Bull sneered. Enjoy your victory while it lasts, old man. It won't. Landry hauled him away. Charlie and Pete followed, escorting the prisoner back to town. The rest of the posse sat there on their horses, looking ashamed. Dutch Kensington finally spoke. Mr. Pruitt, we should have stood with you from the start. We was wrong. You're standing now, I said. That's what counts. We rode back to Garrett with the morning sun warm on our backs. Mercy sat behind me, that silver bracelet catching the light. For the first time since I'd met her, she wasn't trembling. But as we crested the hill overlooking town, Sam pointed. Smoke! That ain't from your house. That burned out yesterday. My gut clenched. We spurred the horses forward. The smoke was rising from the courthouse square. A crowd had gathered, bigger than the one at the auction. And standing on the courthouse steps, surrounded by 3 hired gunmen I didn't recognize, was Vernon Cade himself. He was holding a torch. We pushed through the crowd. Landry was already there, Charlie beside him, both looking furious and helpless. What's going on? I demanded. Landry's face was grim. Cade showed up 20 minutes ago with them guns. Set fire to the land office, all the property deeds, titles, mortgages, everything that proves who owns what in this county. Says if he can't control the law, he'll just erase it. My blood ran cold. Without those records, every farmer, every shopkeeper, every homeowner in Garrett was at Cade's mercy. He could claim anything, foreclose on anyone. That's insane, Silas breathed. That's desperate, Sam corrected. Cornered animals are the most dangerous. Cade's voice rang out over the crowd. People of Garrett. You've turned against me, fine. But before I fall, I'm taking this whole town with me. Without those deeds, you got nothing. No proof of ownership. I can buy up every single property for pennies at the county auction. The crowd erupted in angry shouts, but Cade's gunmen kept everyone back. Then, from the edge of the crowd, a voice called out, You're forgetting something, Vernon. Everyone turned. Luther Gibbs stepped forward, carrying a heavy wooden box. His hands weren't shaking anymore. Before I filed those deeds in the land office, I made copies, every single one. Been keeping them in my cellar for years. Figured someday I might need insurance against men like you. Luther set the box down at his feet. You can burn the land office, but you can't erase the truth. Cade's face went white, then purple. You little rat, You'll what? Luther stood tall, no fear in his voice anymore. Kill me in front of 100 witnesses? You're done, Vernon. Accept it. For a long moment, nobody breathed. Cade stood there on those courthouse steps, torch in hand, his empire crumbling around him. The gunmen looked at each other, clearly wondering if they were being paid enough for this. Then Cade did something nobody expected. He laughed. Not a bitter laugh, but genuine, almost relieved. He dropped the torch, Landry stomped it out quick, and sat down heavy on the steps. You know what? You're right. I'm done. He looked up at the crowd, something broken in his eyes. I spent 40 years building an empire, and for what? So I could die alone, hated by everyone. So I could burn down towns and ruin lives over a deaf girl I didn't even want. I just couldn't stand losing to a nobody like Pruitt. The crowd was silent, shocked. Cade looked directly at me. You win, railroad man. Take your girl. Keep your dignity. His voice dropped. I hope it keeps you warm when you're my age and realize you got nothing else. The gunmen, seeing their boss had given up, mounted their horses and rode out. Landry walked up the steps, but didn't cuff Cade, just stood there. Mr. Cade, Landry said quietly, you're gonna answer for what you done. The arsons, the bribes, all of it. I know. Cade stood slowly, like an old man, though he couldn't have been more than 55. I know. As they led him away, the crowd parted. Some folks spat at him. Others just stared. But I saw something in their faces. Not triumph, but sadness. They'd watched a man destroy himself, and there wasn't no joy in that. Mercy tugged my sleeve. She'd written on a scrap of paper, "Is it over?" I wanted to say yes, but something in my gut said we weren't quite finished yet, because Judge Fenton was still out there somewhere, and desperate men do desperate things. Thursday morning came with a sky so clear and blue it hurt to look at. The courthouse, what was left of it after the fire damage, was packed tighter than a sardine can. Seemed like every soul in Garrett County had showed up to see how this story ended. Judge Fenton sat behind his bench, looking 20 years older than he had a week ago. His hands trembled as he shuffled papers. The federal marshal from El Paso sat in the front row, watching everything with hawk eyes. Once that investigation started, it moved fast. I sat at the defendant's table with Mercy beside me. She wore a simple dress Opal had sewn for her, and that silver Navajo bracelet caught the morning light coming through the windows. Her hand found mine under the table, squeezed tight. Across the aisle, Vernon Cade sat alone. No fancy lawyers, no Bull McCarthy, no hired guns. Just a broken man in a wrinkled suit staring at nothing. Fenton banged his gavel, voice weak. This court is now in session. We're here to determine the legal custody of Miss Mercy Hollis and to address charges against Elwood Pruitt regarding. The courtroom doors banged open. Everyone turned. Sam Begay walked in, followed by 5 Navajo elders, including the grandmother, Ozzono no Da'i. They wore traditional dress, silver and turquoise gleaming. Behind them came a white man in a suit, carrying a leather briefcase with a federal seal stamped on it. "Your Honor," the man said, his voice carrying authority, "I'm Agent Howard Pierce, Bureau of Indian Affairs. I have federal documents that supersede this proceeding." Fenton's face went gray. "This is a county matter." "Not anymore." Pierce set his briefcase on the table, pulled out official papers. "As of 6 o'clock this morning, Miss Mercy Hollis has been formally adopted into the Navajo Nation under the Indian Adoption Act of 1934. That places her under federal jurisdiction. This court has no authority over her custody." A collective gasp went through the crowd. Pierce continued, "Furthermore, the Navajo Council has designated Mr. Elwood Pruitt as her legal guardian within white society should she choose to live outside the reservation. The tribe vouches for his character and commitment." Fenton looked like he wanted to argue, but the federal marshal stood up. "Judge, I'd accept those papers if I were you. Fighting the Bureau ain't a battle you're gonna win." For a long moment, Fenton just sat there. Then, slow as molasses, he nodded. "The court recognizes the federal adoption. Miss Hollis is removed from county jurisdiction." Mercy's hand squeezed mine so hard, I thought my fingers might break. I looked down at her. She was crying but smiling at the same time, maybe the first real smile I'd ever seen on her face. But then Fenton spoke again. "However, there's still the matter of the charges against Mr. Pruitt." My stomach dropped. "Your Honor," Landry started to object. "Let me finish, Marshal." Fenton removed his glasses, rubbed his eyes. When he looked up, something had changed in his face. "I've been a judge for 23 years. Thought I was serving the law, but I've been serving Vernon Cade instead, and calling it justice." His voice cracked. "I took bribes. I falsified warrants. I let innocent people lose their homes because a rich man paid me to." The courtroom went dead silent. "Mr. Pruitt, you broke several laws this week, but you did it protecting a child who had nobody else. You did it with honor." Fenton stood, removed his black robe, the symbol of his office. "I ain't fit to judge you. Hell, I ain't fit to judge anybody." He laid the robe on the bench. "I'm resigning effective immediately, and I'm recommending to the county that all charges against Elwood Pruitt be dropped." You could have heard a pin drop. Then Vernon Cade stood up. Everyone tensed, expecting another outburst. But he just walked over to where I sat, looked down at Mercy. "Girl," he said, his voice hoarse. "I'm sorry. I treated you like property 'cause I was so damn used to owning things, I forgot people ain't meant to be owned." He pulled something from his pocket, a thick envelope, set it on the table in front of me. "That's $500. It ain't enough to make up for what I done, but it'll help you rebuild your house." I stared at the money, then at him. Why? Because I'm 70 years old, I got no family, and I just realized I wasted my whole life being feared instead of loved. His eyes were wet. "Don't make my mistake, Pruitt. Love that girl. Teach her she matters. Give her the life I never gave my own daughter before she ran off and never spoke to me again." He walked out of the courtroom, and I never saw Vernon Cade again. Heard later, he moved to California, died 2 years after that. Alone, like he predicted. The federal marshal dismissed the case. The courtroom erupted in cheers. Folks swarmed around us. Opal crying, Silas grinning, Charlie pumping my hand, Luther promising to help rebuild my house. But I only had eyes for Mercy. She pulled out her paper and pencil, wrote with shaken hands, "Does this mean I can stay with you?" I wrote back, "If you want to, do you?" She didn't write an answer. Instead, she wrapped her arms around me and held on like I was the only solid thing in a world that had tried to sweep her away. And standing there in that courthouse with the morning sun streaming through the windows, I realized something. I'd lost my house, my savings, nearly my life. But I'd gained a daughter. Azon Nodai approached, placed her weathered hand on Mercy's head, spoke in Navajo. Sam translated. "She says the girl has two families now, the Dene and you. She says that's the way it should be. We're all stronger when we stand together." The old grandmother looked at me, smiled, and said something else. Sam grinned. "She says you got a Navajo name now, Atsa Yaji, Little Eagle, because you're small but fierce when protecting the young." Tell her I'm honored. As the crowd dispersed and folks headed home, Mercy and I walked out into the Texas sunshine. The town looked different somehow, like a storm had passed and left everything washed clean. She tugged my sleeve, pointed to the empty lot where my house had been. I wrote, "We'll build a new one, better than before, with a room just for you." She wrote back, "With a porch, with the biggest porch in Texas." She smiled, that smile that still came rare but meant everything when it appeared. And as we walked toward Silas's place where we'd been staying, I saw it. Folks already gathering at my burned lot. Charlie with lumber, Dutch with tools, Pete leading a wagon full of supplies, even Mrs. Kowalski with a basket of food. "Figured you could use some help, Elwood," Charlie called out. By sunset, the frame of a new house was already rising from the ashes. Narrator's voice, softer now, like sitting across from you on a porch at dusk. Now, I know some of you might be thinking that's too neat an ending, too much like a fairy tale, but I'm here to tell you, it happened just like I said. Maybe not in Garrett, Texas in '34 exactly, but it happened. Still happens, in small towns where powerful men think they own everything, including people's dignity. See, here's what I learned from all that mess, and maybe you'll take something from it too. Dignity ain't something you can buy at the general store. It ain't something that gets burned up when your house catches fire. It lives inside you, in the choices you make when nobody's watching, and especially in the choices you make when everybody is. Elwood Pruitt was just a broke, worn-out railroad man with nothing but a mortgage and memories of a daughter he'd lost. But he saw wrong happening right in front of him, and he couldn't look away. That's all it takes sometimes. One person who won't look away, and that girl, Mercy, she found family in a stranger, found her voice even though she couldn't speak a word, found out that blood don't make family, love does, commitment does, standing up when it costs you everything does. As for Vernon Cade and Judge Fenton, well, empires built on fear and greed, they crumble eventually. Might take time, but justice has a long memory and patience that outlasts us all. If you're listening to this late at night, or maybe at dawn when the world's still quiet and full of possibility, I want you to ask yourself something. If I saw that girl on the auction block, what would I do? If standing up meant losing everything, would I still stand? I got faith most of you would. Even in hard times, especially in hard times, there's still goodness hiding in ordinary folks. Just needs someone to give it permission to show itself. Mercy's 23 now, married to a good man, got a baby girl of her own, still wears that silver bracelet her Navajo grandmother gave her. And every Sunday, she brings her family to my porch, and we sit together watching the sunset, not needing words, just needing each other. That's what family is. That's what dignity looks like. If this story touched you somewhere deep, let me know where you're listening from. And if you ever find yourself face to face with a choice between comfort and conscience, I hope you'll remember Elwood Pruitt standing on those courthouse steps. Until next time, may your dignity carry you through whatever storms brewing on the horizon, and may you always have the courage to say, "Not while I'm breathing."